Coverage on this continues now with new outrage tonight from the mother of a young man murdered and thrown off a cliff in Azusa.
Her son's accused killers had all special charges against them dismissed in court this morning under DA George Gascón's new directives. Bill Malusian joins us live with that story tonight. Bill.
Well, Alex, obviously every murder is brutal and terrible, but the details in this one are particularly heinous. And when I spoke to the victim's mom tonight, it was just absolutely heartbreaking. She tells me she had to witness her son's alleged killers smirking in court this morning as they found out all of their special charges were being dismissed.
It's sick. This is all sick.
Desiree Andrade and her daughter left the courtroom stunned this morning.
Felt let down by this justice system.
Desiree's son, 20-year-old Julian Andrade, was viciously murdered in May 2018, allegedly by 5 suspects who thought he stole some of their weed.
They brutally murdered my son. Brutally.
The suspects are accused of repeatedly beating and stabbing Andrade for several minutes until he lost consciousness, then driving him up Highway 39 in Azusa to the mountains to dispose of him. During that drive, prosecutors say they stomped on his head when they realized he was still alive. Then, when they threw him off a cliff and heard him still struggling, one of them went down to stomp on his head some more. Andrade's body was found 2 days later.
Every day I miss my son. I wake up thinking of him. I have severe panic attacks, thinking about the pain that he went through and that I was not there to help him.
The suspects were charged with special circumstances of deadly weapon, kidnapping, robbery, lying in wait. All those would have put them away for life without parole if convicted, but under new DA George Gascón's reforms, all of those special charges were dismissed in court today. And Andrade says 2 of her son's alleged killers were giddy over the news.
Smirking from ear to ear. You have one of the lawyers, giving one of them a fist bump on, on his shoulder, like, good job, way to go. Really? They thought my son was dead 3 different times, and yet they continued to beat my son to death. You're going to tell me those aren't murderers? This was no mistake.
The dismissal of the charges means even if convicted of murder, the suspects could be paroled someday, potentially as early as 20 to 30 years. And Andrade tells me that development was a massive slap in the face to her and her son's memory.
Him and I were inseparable. I mean, that kid called me for everything, and now I got to explain to my grandkids one day, Grandma, what happened to my son? To my dad, and I'm gonna have to say, what? I don't ever want to share these details.
Andrade tells me Gascón's office never reached out about her son's case, and she is now on a crusade to highlight what she says is panning out to be a lack of justice from the justice system.
And I don't ever want to stand here and tell my grandkids, you know what, the law changed and I just sat back and watched. Absolutely not. I'm gonna fight for him. I just ask you, George Gascón, to please think what you're doing. This is not right. This is not fair on so many levels.
And we did reach out to Mr. Gascón's office for a comment on this story. They conceded to us that, yes, with the dropping of these special charges, these suspects could potentially see parole someday, but they pointed out to us that the parole board over the last 10 years has only granted parole about 15% of the time. As for the death penalty being off of the table, another one of Mr. Gascón's reforms, they tell us that the death penalty is deeply flawed, ineffective at stopping crime, and a massive waste of taxpayer resources. At the end of the day, Mr. Gascón's camp says just because they're taking these enhancements and special circs away, it doesn't mean these suspects won't be held accountable with serious time in prison. We're live in Brea tonight. Bill Malusian, Fox 11 News.